Okay, this month we're going to look at January, which I call Let It Snow, and it's a cute little snowman design. As we do with all of these videos, I'll be going back and forth between the block and the ornament. The design on both is the same. Key difference, of course, is finishing off at the end, but all the beginning steps are, of course, the same. So let's open up our kit here and see what we've got, just like we always do. So inside we've got our pieces and our little envelope, all our little floss, our needle, and our backing square. And of course our instructions with a handy little diagram that shows us how to lay out our snowman. All right, so let's see if I can get these in the picture at the same time. All right, so we want to dump our little parts out here and decide how we're going to lay out our pieces of our snowman. Now, a couple of key things with the snowman. First off, your white piece, and this is true with all the white pieces in any of these kits, it's really hard to figure out which side has the fusible webbing on it. So on something like this red piece here, it's really obvious, right? You've got a regular red side and a really kind of fuzzy side. That's the side that has the webbing on it. It's easy to see. Not so easy to see with your white pieces. See, they look basically the same. So I do this by running my finger over it. And I can tell that this is slightly a tackier side, so I know that's the surface I want to place down. So I'm going to take and I'm going to put my snowman in the middle of my square. And then if we look up at our picture here, all right, so what else do we need to do? We need to get his hat on. And now I don't put his hat straight on his head like this. You know, that's not my personal favorite look. I like to give it a little off to the side. I think it's a little more stylish, gives your snowman a little more personality. So I put it off to the side there, and you can kind of see that up in this picture here. So we're going to keep his hat over to that side. What other pieces do we need to put on? Well, we've got the top of his scarf, so this piece here. That's going to go right below his neck, rounded side over to that side. Now you'll see that we're not attaching the bottom portions of our scarf. I let these dangle, so we're going to add these later in our embroidery process. I think it adds a little bit of dimension rather than just, you know, ironing them down and having them stuck. Just having a little bit of dimension to our design there. Okay, so we've got our scarf on. What else do we need? We look up at his hat, and we have this little hat band. Now, there's a little curve to your hat band. You'll see it here. And you want that following the curve of the top of the hat, right? And across the brim here. So the curve is actually, the curved part is facing downwards towards his head. We put that on there. And of course, we have his little nose. Again, because we have his hat kind of set off to the side, and we have him kind of looking up, I'm going to take his nose and place it looking upward. Again, so you can see that in your little picture. You always want to follow your diagrams. Everything that's shown in the red in the picture is going to be something that you're going to embroider on, so you're not going to put those pieces on quite yet. Once we're happy with this, I think his head's looking a little funky here. You're going to take and you're going to cover this. And again, the more you touch each piece, it seems like you touch one piece and three pieces move. And because on the video, this ends up getting a little bit distorted. He looks a little funny here. In person, he looks a little less funny. So we're gonna put his nose up a little further. Now, whenever I'm going to iron, I always take and I cover my design with a piece of just cotton. You'll also see here that he doesn't appear centered. So if you don't like him, make sure you move him down before you iron him here. Once this is ironed in place, generally you cannot remove this. So the key part is to get all your parts where you want them to be before ironing. There we are. We're better centered there. Again, his hat looks funnier in the video than it does in reality because of the distortion of the angle of the camera. But all right, so once we're happy with all of his pieces, we're going to cover him up and we're going to take him over to the iron, or actually hopefully your iron is nearby. In my case, my iron is not nearby. It's behind me, about 10 feet away. So I'm not going to show you the ironing step, and through the magic of pre-preparation, I already have an ornament that's all ironed down and ready to go. So I'm not going to take you through all the steps of sewing here. There's other videos available to you in my library that show you my technique for doing the blanket stitch, and also finishing ornaments and things like that. So I'm just going to touch on some of the things that are unique to this particular ornament, so we keep this kind of a nice little short tutorial. So some of the things that are unique on here, I don't think I've shown making a French knot. The eyes and the buttons, so here's our design again. So our eyes and our buttons on our snowman, those are French knots. If you haven't done this before, practice on something else first. Once you get the hang of French knots, they're easy, but I think they're a little perplexing the first couple of times you do them. So I'm going to take and I'm going to start with an eye. And again, his head is on an angle here, so his eyes are going to end up a little bit angled as I make them. And I'm just going to come up through. If it makes you nervous to not pre-plan, you can always use one of these fabulous blue markers to mark in your spots. I tend not to do that because, of course, I make a lot of these ornaments. And the other problem is on the felt, how these work is you're supposed to wet them with water. See, it says washable fabric pen. I find that the blue bleeds into the felt, and it's a bigger pain getting it off than the value I get from doing it. If you have better luck with fabric markers, have at it. You can mark your spots. So at any rate, when you're making your French knot, you want to come up through the back, and I do have a knot there, and that's really important with making a French knot. You can't start out without a knotted thread here. You'll go crazy. And what you do is you're now going to take your needle, and you're going to place it near, and you don't have to be sitting right on top of that spot. Just be somewhere fairly close, and you're going to wrap the thread. See right there, I just did... Can't see that good against the black. Let's see if I can get it over the white. Yeah, all right, so there's one wrap. I'm going to do a second wrap here. Most French knots are done with either 2 or 3 wraps. In this case, I'm going to do 3. So I've got 3 wraps, and you're just going to hold it on the needle. So see how I have my finger holding those loops on there? And you're going to place your needle right back near where you came up. Try not to go actually back in the same hole. If you get lucky enough that you go back in the same hole, sometimes you can end up pulling your knot completely through. So you're going to place that there. And then the key is, so you see on my other hand here, this hand, I'm pulling those loops tight around that needle. So see right now, you've got all of those loops nice and tight, and you're going to hold it. I'm holding with my thumb, holding that in place and bringing the needle through. All right, so you're going to pull this through till it's tight, and there you go. There's one eyeball. All right, now I'm going to do his other little eyeball here. Again, on a little angle here. So we're going to come up through, and you want to pull it till you're contacting the back. Don't pull it too tight because you might pull your other knot through. 1, 2, 3, so a little faster this time. Wrap around 3 times, take your needle, place it near where you came up, tighten your loops down, and then hold your left hand here, assuming that you're right-handed. You're holding that in place and pulling your needle through the other side while you hold that in place. So see, we have his cute little eyeballs in now, and he's looking off towards, I don't know, maybe some falling snowflakes or something. So we just keep doing that. I'll give you that a couple more times here. So he has buttons that go down the front of him. 1, 2, 3, down through. Pull it tight. Always got to remember to pull it tight. Weird things that can happen while you're making French knots, and why I say practice this first. In fact, you can kind of see it here. I don't know if I can get that up close enough to the camera. See, I was a little off on where I went back down in, so we've got kind of this little off-center business. So there's one problem you can get. I don't know if I can replicate the next. If you don't hold your thread tight enough, or tighten it down through here. So I'm going to do this real sloppy. See how I don't have that tightened? And you go and pull this through. Sorry, Mr. Snowman, ugly French knot. Okay, so that's what happens there. You end up with all this bagginess instead of a nice, neat knot. And that's something, of course, that you don't want to do. I'll end up having to pull that out. There's not a lot you can do to solve that problem. You've actually made a knot, so you end up having to cut off your French knots when you have that kind of problem. I'll actually end up cutting off both of these because they have issues with them. All right, so there's French knots. Now, one of the other things that's unique on this particular design is that he has his arms that are sewn in. And I think you can do anything you want with this. If you want to just have arms sticking out to the side, you know, do two like this one over here, that's perfectly fine. I did this one so it's crossing in front. Again, we have our snowman's gaze going off to the side here. So I kind of replicated it with this arm. Once again, if you want to use your washable fabric marker, you're welcome to do that. I'm just going to wing it again. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to make this arm that's kind of off to the side here. And this is just done essentially with straight stitches or back stitches. So come up through, and the thing that's unique this time is that I am using 4 strands of floss here. We almost do everything in 2. In this case, we're going to use 4 because we want his arms not to be too skinny. So 4 is a nice number here. If you wanted to be real thick, I suppose you could use all 6 strands. So I'm just going to make part of his arm over to here to make to his elbow, and I want it to cross in front of him. So this is really, really free form here. Don't get too uptight on what, you know, precision. You can see here's another little issue, and I'll show you what happened there. So we have our back, and again, I didn't cut off my black piece here, so that is not helping my cause any. But you see I had this remainder coming off past this knot. If you catch that, it can come up through your hole. You should be able to pull that back through, and that gets rid of that problem from the front. Okay, I'm going to make a few more little stitches here to make his arm. And I want this to look like a stick. So I'm going to make some other little pieces that come off. Again, the diagram that I provide you, you don't need to follow that perfectly. Just make whatever you think looks nice. Again, sticks in nature are not symmetric or all perfect. You don't need to be doing that here. You're just trying to make it look like a natural stick that was used to make his arm. So there's one arm for you. And his other arm, you might want to just make going off to the side. Again, if you want to make the other arm folded in, have at it. You're free to do what you want here. It's your project. So we're going to come off here and just make his other little arm. And I'm doing this in some big stitches. If you wanted to do it in a bunch of smaller stitches, you're welcome to do that too. I tend not to. I kind of like the look of the big stitches in this case. And it saves me time. Again, I make hundreds of ornaments a year, so a little bit different perspective, I guess. So there we go. And I'm going to bring that right through here. And there's his other little arm. Okay. We've seen me do this on some other things. I don't tend to knot off my floss on the back of my ornaments. If anything, I'll just run it through here. I'm going to trim this off because his arm is done. So I just run it through a little bit there and then trim the excess. You really don't need to knot them. You're not making clothes here. No one's going to be pulling on this. It's just got to stay in place to be decorative. So knotting really doesn't gain you a lot. Okay, the last thing I want to show you on this particular ornament is the little kind of evergreen sprig that I do up with his hat. So that's shown here, and it's really illustrated. It's hard to see. It's also kind of hard to stitch, honestly. So normally what I do is I would come and do my straight stitches across my hat band here. I don't blanket stitch around this hat band. It's too small to do that effectively. So I just make a line of back stitch across this. And I actually didn't even start over to the edge here because I'm trying to get us to the point where we can make that little evergreen bow. Hold on. Catch up a little bit so there's some actual back stitching. All right, let's just get one more stitch here, and then I'm going to show you this little evergreen thing here. All right, so let's assume that we've gone all the way across his hat band with nice even stitches, which I really didn't do, but we want to make this evergreen here. And now here's the trick with this. This ends up coming out smaller than you think it's going to. So you see how I have my needle way up near the top of his hat, and I'm going to come down right towards his hat band here. And I'm going to make a long stitch here. And you think, oh, I'm making this really long thing. No, it really doesn't turn out that way. I'm going to make a second one of those to make my other evergreen bow here. So I'm going to start out again out on his hat, come back down in the same hole that I was in. And then on here, I'm just going to make a few short stitches to make this look like he stuck a piece of evergreen in his hat. And you can see, you can almost not see those little stitches. So make them bigger than you think you need to so that they show up for you. All right, so again, very difficult to see up this close, but you're going to make, 3 or 4 stitches down each side. And that just gives you a little bit of decoration to his hat. When you're done with that, again, hard to see here, you'll come down into this area, and don't do this with the green. I'm just showing you where you're going to come up here. And just like we did with the black for the eyes and the buttons here, you're going to use your red floss to make 3 little berries. So that's like some berries on the end of your evergreen, or I suppose we could call these holly. Those could be holly berries. Just give him a little decoration to his hat. All right, so I think that's most of what I wanted to cover for our little Let It Snow snowman. A few more notes. In his nose, I just run a little line or 2 little lines here. I don't try to blanket stitch his nose. It's too small for that. I do, however, blanket stitch his scarf. When you're done with all your stitching, and before you put your back on, you're going to want to attach your 2 little dangling pieces of your scarf. I just put them on top of each other. If you want to be a little fancy, you can do a little trim here. Make that a little bit rounded. Another thing that you can do is take your scissors and make 2 little cuts down here to make this like its fringe. So just 2 little cuts, and you can kind of fringe those out. Again, that's a little extra fanciness to your design. So I think that covers most of the special things about our Let It Snow ornament. All right, good luck with your French knots. And again, if you get some that are messy, good news. You can cut them right off. Don't be afraid. Okay.